How's it going, guys? What's up? My name is Matt. You don't know me because you probably never seen me because I'm a small YouTuber on this channel. And I just wanted to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And you know I'm legit because I got a shirt that says she wants the D&D. Does she, or does she just want the D? You decide. Look at this face. You decide. Look at his arm. All right. Well, I want to give you some tips about DMing as a new DM. So I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was about 13 years of age, 1999, way back in the day. So I'm an old man at this point. I know I don't look at it. I guess I'm middle aged technically. I'm 38, but I've learned a lot of tricks over the years about DMing and keeping players interested and keeping the game going. And yeah, I just wanted to like share some of my stuff with you. And sorry, my camera's garbage. Whatever. But I want to get down to some brass tacks here, basically, and just talk about DMing. So being a new DM is incredibly intimidating. You know, you got these players relying on you to give them a fun experience. And, you know, there's a whole lot of shenanigans. They want you to know the rules. They want you to help with this and that and et cetera, et cetera. And it's incredibly intimidating as a new DM. So I was out late tonight hanging out with a friend. I got a little drunk, still a little drunk, but that loosened me up a little bit enough to record this video. So welcome. And also I'm hoping that this maybe will entice a few people to subscribe because it would be nice to grow the channel a bit. So welcome. I'm Early Gaming. Hi, I'm Matt. Yeah. So I'm trying to think exactly what to say here. I want to give advice for new DMs and kind of convince people that it's okay to say, hey, I want a DM, even if you've never done it before. Maybe you've done it a few times and maybe it didn't go so well. Or maybe you feel like, you know, maybe I've done it a few times and I felt okay, but I could use a few tips, that sort of thing. So that's what I'm here for. Now, I'm not going to say I'm the best DM in the world or anything like that, but I'm a very comfortable DM. I feel very comfortable DMing for pretty much anybody at this point, just because I've done it for so long. You know, age of 13, now 38, what is that, 25 years? Sure, I took a few years off here and there. But in general, I feel pretty comfortable DMing anything. And to be honest, just to try to give myself a few more credentials to convince you to keep watching or listening or subscribe or whatever you may do, I'm going to say a few things. First of all, I'm working on an edit of the last one shot, which turned into a 3-shot that I've done, and I think it's highly entertaining. So if you'd like to see that when it comes out, please subscribe. And beyond that, I want to give you some value in this video and try to make it as quick as possible without rambling too much, but that's going to be difficult because I still got a good buzz going. And maybe that'll also be an excuse for my slurred words and mistakes. So when you're a new DM, usually new DMs have a bit of a story and they want to kind of railroad the players through it. Now, there's a problem with railroading your players through a new story, and here's what it is. When the story is on rails, now this isn't necessarily a bad thing, first of all. Being on rails is not necessarily a bad thing. Some people love that because at least there's some direction and it's not so open-ended that nobody knows what to do. But you have to be okay with going off your rails, and because I guarantee you that nobody's going to do what you expect as a DM. No player is going to do what you expect. You might present a situation and you think, oh, they're just going to fight here and try to kill them, but there's going to be some player that tries to talk their way out of it, and you as a DM have to decide. And if you as a DM decide that talking their way out of it is not an option because you already decided ahead of time that it's not an option, that's going to disappoint them and annoy them, because as a player, you want to use your character's abilities and your character's personality and develop your personality. And so as a DM, you have to accommodate and think in terms of the NPC that you're in the mind of. Now, this is super important and probably the biggest point, and probably also the most difficult point of this. If you're good at improv in general, or at least comfortable with improv, you don't even necessarily have to be good with it. You just have to be accepting of it, then you're probably going to be okay with this, because there's this rule in improv, and I don't know if you've heard this, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but it's the rule of yes. When someone comes up with something in improv, you don't say no and deny them. You say yes, because that's more fun. It's more fun for the audience. It's more fun for the player. When you say no, it just shuts everybody down and makes them think, oh, this sucks. Right? But when you say yes, it keeps the train going. It keeps the fun going. And now the ultimate goal of D&D is literally to have fun. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. That's the bottom line. If everyone's miserable, you're doing something wrong. And maybe it's not necessarily you. I don't want to like place the blame on one specific person or even necessarily the DM, because it's a multiplayer game. You can't place all the blame on one person, but a lot of the blame is naturally put on the DM, because it is the DM's job to organize and supervise and keep things going and keep things flowing and keep things entertaining as best you can. Now, no one expects you to be perfect. Even the players understand that the DM's not perfect. But, as a DM, okay, so let's back this up a little bit and wrap this into some kind of little scenario. So let's say you start a new campaign. You say, hey, I'm ready to DM. I want to DM. We guys make some characters and you kind of jump in. And maybe you have a few rules for your characters. That's fine. Maybe you don't. Maybe you say play whatever you want to play. And here's a few guidelines. Now, this is really important too. In general, in character creation, you want to have some guidelines. They don't necessarily have to be like super specific. They can be pretty broad, but you got to have something. That's the thing. You can't say, "Oh, make whatever level you want. It's fine. Get whatever items you want. That's fine." That doesn't work, because people are just gonna be like, "Okay, well, I'm just," or at least somebody, not necessarily everybody, but somebody's gonna say, "I want OP items and OP character," and they'll just kind of break the game. And maybe that's okay if that's what you're going for. I'm not here to naysay really, but in general, you kind of have some guidelines. And for me, it's usually like, here's your level, here's how much gold you have, you can buy from these books, and there you go. Yeah, something like that. Something like that's fine. Or maybe you have a more specific scenario where, I don't know, you decide. You get the point. So as a new DM, my God, have I ever really been rambling for 7 minutes? Wow, Jesus Christ. All right, so as a new DM, you're faced with a lot of challenges, but basically, here's what I'm going to say. This is generally what I'm going to do. And obviously, this is my perspective. This is my interpretation of things. You need to have some sort of plan. Now, I say that, but I don't mean it. What I mean by that, I know it's confusing, but you don't necessarily have to have like a super specific railroaded plane. So we're kind of going back to this railroad thing. The railroading is not particularly good. It's good in some sense, that at least you have a direction, but it's not good in the sense that you don't want to deny people their abilities. So that's where I'm going with this. You need to let players use their abilities. If they try to do something, you don't just shut them down and say, no, you can't do that. That's a big no as a DM in general. So you want to at least let people try. So the general answer is you can try, and you don't even need to say that out loud. You can just kind of say like, okay, let's give a scenario. So maybe there's a big bad boss. He's super strong. He's got a great axe, and he's probably going to one shot a few people. I don't know. That's a pretty extreme scenario. You might not run into that, or maybe you will. Who knows? But in general, if you have someone who says, okay, I'm going to heat up his axe to try to make him hurt his hands and drop it so that he's weakened. As a DM, you have some options here. You can say something like, "Oh well, he's got gloves and he's not gonna get hurt by the heat anyway. So it doesn't even matter." You could say that as a DM, but now go into this perspective of the player who's trying to be creative and come up with a way to overcome this boss in a way that's just a little more than just hack and slash, right? That player, if he hears something like that, is just going to be like, what am I even doing here? I'm trying to use my abilities. I'm trying to get creative. I'm trying to help the party. And I'm just kind of getting shut down by like logic that you're coming up with on the fly. You're a shitty DM, right? That's what they're going to say, basically. So as a DM, you don't want to do that. You want to say, all right, let's, at least make a roll. At least make a roll. So that's big rule number one, at least make a roll, right? I'm saying right like you can actually respond, but the point stands. So you at least got to let them have a chance of succeeding in what they're trying to do, no matter what it is. And, that's kind of a wishy-washy term, no matter what it is. But in general, you want to let people try their creativity. And you know what? I'm even going to say that if someone's doing something that you didn't even think of as a possibility as a DM, and like, wow, I never thought that that would be a possibility, give them advantage. They're creative. They're outsmarting you. That's awesome as a player. That's something you want to see as a DM because you're in a very special group that is not afraid to push the boundaries, do things a little different. And what's going to end up happening with this sort of stuff is you're going to have joy. Players are going to have joy, and maybe you get shut down. So what? Quell your ego and let yourself get shut down, because you know what? It's not you that's getting shut down. It's this boss that they've been fighting, or this problem they've been trying to overcome. So separate the problem from your DM, from the DM, right? You're presenting this problem, you're asking them to come up with a solution to overcome it, and when they try to come up with something, give them a chance. And if it's creative and you're like, wow, that's good, I didn't even think of that, give them advantage, give them a bonus chance, because hey, that's good. And if you can't do that, you probably shouldn't even be DMing. You gotta reduce your ego. You gotta be able to shut yourself down. You gotta be able to be the person to say, hey, these people are outsmarting me. That's what makes a good DM at times. I know I went in a long, elaborate way of explaining that, but I think this is like the most important thing, if I'm being perfectly honest, is to let yourself get shut down, to be able to give people compliments for the things that they're doing that is better than you. Because you're all humans. Just because you're the DM doesn't mean like, oh, I have the highest IQ, I'm better than all of you. It doesn't mean any of that. In fact, in general, your players are probably going to be smarter than you, and that's in my opinion a good thing. So I want to get on to the second point, and that's more to the story. This is probably the hardest part of DMing. Letting yourself get shut down, letting people break things in ways that you didn't see, giving them advantage when they come up with creative solutions. That's super good. That's going to like carry you a lot of the way. But what's really, really, really going to make people remember your campaign and really take it to the next level is a really good story. And with combining some of these things, you're gonna take it to the next level. And it's really gonna be something that people never forget. And I don't say that lightly. I've had campaigns that are stuck in my head, not because I came up with these super good stories or the super good bosses. Sure, that's nice and all. But what really makes me remember them is how the players overcame these situations that I threw at them. So, so on to the second point. The point is you need to have a good story. And this is really, really hard. This is the hardest part, in my opinion. So you need to have some kind of arc, and the arc doesn't even need to go the way you think it should go. You should probably have like a ideal scenario of how you think it should go if everything goes as perfectly planned, but also you should be really malleable in this context, because if they don't do exactly what you want them to do to make your arc perfect, let it happen. That's super important to just let it happen, or at least give it a chance. Don't just completely shut them down. I already kind of said that, but the story is really where D&D lies. So before you ever DM, you need to have a broad, and I do say broad, perspective of what your story is going to be. And I'm trying to think of a good example here, but basically it's like, I'm just going to come up with a kind of random thing off the top of my head here. I like the DM randomly and off the top of my head sometimes. I find that to be really fun. It's really hard to do on like Roll20, but you can do it in person a lot easier, at least in my experience, because everyone's there with you and you can draw things out or whatever. It's a little harder to do on Roll20 or online, because you really need to have these scenes prepared online. So I'm kind of getting derailed, but that really is kind of a third bonus point. So you want to have a story, and your story needs to have some like key points that need to be hit, and that's super critical. And it doesn't even necessarily matter what these key points are. You just have to have them. And I'm actually going to give an example here from someone else that DM'd. Diabetic Lefty. Love you, man. You DM'd one of the best campaigns I ever played in, and it's because it threw me for such a twist, and I loved it. It was so fun to play in. All right. So I had this one person DM for me, and I'm going to give you lessons from his campaign because I learned a lot from this. This was really good. He threw us into a scenario. We were in a town, and there was a basically a corrupt organization of government. So the guards were, as far as we could tell, corrupt. Someone high in the rankings of the wardens was corrupt, and we basically our task was to figure out this corrupt person and out them. And it was really really hard because everyone kind of seemed normal when we questioned them, and this was somewhat the arc of the story was that trying to remember here exactly, but basically, do I want to spoil it? Well, there were some key points in this story, some key arcs where we had to discover some certain things, and there were just some key points that we kind of needed to hit to get to the next stage. And that's sometimes really critical. And some of those in this case were like we had to figure out that one of the leaders of the guards, and I'm paraphrasing here, so forgive me. One of the leaders of the guards was not a human or not a normal person. He was a shapeshifter. So there was someone infiltrating the guards that was corrupting things. And that was a key point we had to figure out. And that was hard for us as players to figure out. We had a lot of questions. We doubted ourselves. And there was this whole internal dialogue of the player characters going on of like, is this the guy? Is this guy legit? And it just brought on this whole nother thing, this whole nother level of now we got to figure out if this guy's legit. And that was like a stage to us. It was like we got to figure out some things here and there, and we have to have some battles. uh Ultimately, we trusted our judgment. We got some hints here and there, but we never got like full proof. And eventually we just kind of like gave in, and we're like, there's been enough hints that this guy is the guy that's corrupting things, and we're gonna out him. So that's what we decided, and that was such a monumental, critical moment for us as players. And seeing the DM handle that in a way that was legit, and seeing the DM handle that in a way that was true to his story. Like that was his story. His story was that this guard was a shapeshifter, and that he was corrupt. And once you out him, you're kind of done with this arc, and you can reveal this, and order is restored, and the town is no longer corrupted by this shapeshifter invader. So a really really cool arc, a really cool story. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the feelings that it brought up. So that was a thing, and that's the point. That was the points of the story. There was like, okay, step 1, you go do this thing. Step 2, you find out that it wasn't quite what it seemed to be. Step 3, you realize that this guy's not everything he seems to be. And then step 4 was like, you have to out him. You have to commit to outing this guy because he seems shady. And once we committed to that, we basically kind of beat the campaign. But we had the option of saying, oh, maybe he is legit and let's go a different angle. There's all this stuff. But, as a DM, he kind of gave us enough hints that we stopped doubting ourselves. But I'm going to tell you, as a player in this campaign, I had doubts the whole way, and it was mind-bogglingly good. It was so fun to have this guy. In the end scenario, he was walking down an alley, and we saw him. I forget what he was doing exactly, and we decided, okay, this is the point. He's alone. He's walking down this alley. We're going to confront him now, and we're going to commit. So as a party, we decided we're going to commit, and we weren't even sure, but we committed anyway. And we could have been wrong, and that was the beauty of it. Is like, what if we're is shutting this guy down, because we literally did. We like literally beat him into the ground and kicked him while he was down and said, "We know you're the corrupt guy." But honestly, I was not 100% sure, but I did it anyway because I was like, I'm pretty sure. And I know this sounds really convoluted, but the point is, you need to have key arcs as a DM, and you need to stick to them no matter what. Because I'm going to tell you, as a player in that campaign, the DM could have said at any point that this is not the guy. Once you get him beaten to the ground, he's bloody, and he seems to be telling the truth and all this stuff. But what happened was, once we beat him while he was down, he turned into his real form, and it was revealed, and we were successful, and it was crazy. And what that meant for us was that this was it all along, and we finally got it, and he stuck to it. Because as a DM, he could have said that you're wrong, even though this was his plan all along. You know, that's the thing with being a DM. You have so much power. And I guess that's lesson 3. You have so much power. It's ridiculous. You can shut people down when they find the right answer and then play this mind game where you say, oh, you've been wrong all along and I've been right. You know, you can do that stuck up DM thing where it's like, I'm better than you. I know the story better because I wrote it. And you know, all that. But the real beauty of the story is when you wrote the story and people figure it out, and you let them have that victory when they finally get it. Because I can't tell you how many DMs will deny a victory just because they have this ego thing where they want to win. And that is so wrong. That ruins campaigns. It ruins the game. People will never play the game again when stuff like that happens. When they have this feeling of like, we did it. We went through all this trouble. We thought we were right. And then we were wrong after all. And like, what have these 5 sessions been for? What have we been wasting our time with? The story sucks, man. We thought we had it, and like, what, you know, it's really frustrating. So I guess the point here is to let players have their victory when they really have it. Stick to your story. And I hope that resonates with you all, because that's probably the biggest thing. When players have their victory, let them have it. Let them have their victory. Give them the reward. Give them experience. Let them have the big bad guy that was unstoppable. Let them have that guy's loot. Let them have the reputation that comes along with it. And I think that's really it. I think that's what makes D&D magical, is these beautiful story arcs that come along. And as a DM, it's your duty to let these arcs happen. Do not let your ego get in the way and say, oh, this is all in the DM's head here. I'm going to speak from the DM's head. You think, oh, I had this beautiful arc and they figured it out, but maybe it was too easy. So I'm just going to pretend they were wrong all along, and I'm going to create a new arc because that was too easy and they beat it. So let's not let the players have the victory. Let's say, oh, you guys have been wrong all along. I'm too smart for you. So let's just say that this guardsman is not a shapeshifter and you're all wrong. And as the story goes on, and then, you know, you might have a few more sessions after that, but I almost guarantee you that it's going to fall off because people are going to be like, this sucks, man. Like, we had a great arc going and we were all wrong, you know, from the player's perspective, we were all wrong. And now, like, we don't even know anymore. Like, we're following the DM's lead, but like, what is he leading us down? Are we going to go down this wild goose chase again just to be wrong again? Like, it's really unsatisfying. So let the story play out, stick to it. All right, well, that's all I got for you guys today. If you got something out of this, consider subscribing or liking or something, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.